get your life back to normal. Lonnie with Restore It, Restoration.
Welcome to another edition of the Service Guys podcast. I'm producer Ruel Abadam, and over on the other mic is your favorite service professional and mine, Lonnie Beecham. Lonnie, how's it going?
It's going great today. It's actually cooled off. It feels like fall. It's only like 78 degrees today and rainy, so it's not 100 degrees and 90% humidity. So we're actually doing great today.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a little bit cooler here where I'm at. It's about 20 degrees cooler than it was at the highest point of the summer. So I just don't have the rain.
Yeah, well, we do, and we need it. We're in a drought, so we need this. So what are we talking about today, Ruel?
Well, today is we have I don't know. I wanted to call it like a one-on-one, but it's basically a no guest type show. It's just sort of like how we started out with the first couple of episodes, and I know that we have a topic that we want to talk about regarding how do you say smoke odor? Does that sound right?
Yes, a good friend of the show and a good friend of both of ours, Jackie Jones, had sent me a message last week about getting rid of. They're looking at a property that has a lot of habitual multi-pack a day smokers that have lived in this house, and so she asked me to talk about how to get rid of those odors.
Sounds like she's talking about my childhood home growing up.
A lot of our childhood homes. I remember growing up with riding with family that, riding in a pickup truck with a wing window maybe cracked, maybe. And we all got out smelling like we just rolled out of a tavern or, something. It wasn't a pretty smell, was it?
The good old days. I swear there were times where it just felt like home, and there are days where it felt like this is just disgusting and awful. How can I live this way? But yeah, it was the good old days.
So this podcast is dedicated to Jackie. So
all right,
yeah. So like I was saying, this property that they're looking at has, for decades, the husband and wife has smoked 2 to 3 packs a day every day. And that's what they tell people. Truth is, it's probably 3 or 4 packs a day. But so I told her I would, instead of going back and forth over email, I told her I would answer some questions for her. And to be completely honest, this can be a major challenge. It's actually easier to get rid of a house fire smell than it is a cigarette smell, only because with a house fire that we've all seen on the news or experienced, you can see the damage, you can see the char, you can see the soot, you can see it, and it's easy. Well, it's relatively easy. You go in and you tear out all the burned items, whatever it is, the walls, the living room, ceiling, the drapes, the carpet, the cabinets in the kitchen, what have you, and then you start doing a more specialized deodorization process. With a cigarette smoke odor, it's more challenging because it's actually from my understanding, it's a smaller smoke particle than a house fire particle. With a house fire, there's so much heat driven soot, and yes, it does damage. You can, it'll drive the soot into the drywall, but with cigarette smoke, it's smaller, and so it gets deeper, and when it's repetitive, then it just never stops, and so you smoke a pack of or 3 packs on the couch every day and in the bathroom, and I go in smokers' houses and I always see that little cigarette burn where they've rested the cigarette on the side of the vanity and stuff like that. It's it's much more invasive in a lot of ways than a traditional house fire.
Wow, you're taking me back.
And,
you're taking me back.
Yes, good thing you didn't have to inherit your parents' home to try to get rid of this odor, because there's a lot of nuances to cigarette smoke. Most of, when you go into a habitual smoker's home, everything has a dingy brown tinge to it, and you don't really notice it until you start cleaning it. And so a few things people need to look at if they're looking to buy a home or they're inheriting grandparents' house or something that's been habitual smokers. Like, the first thing, if I was called out to look at this house, the first thing I would look at is, does this house have popcorn ceilings? If it does, that's an automatic scrape that off. And to scrape popcorn ceiling off can be dangerous, believe it or not. There's a lot of asbestos in that popcorn texture. People don't realize that. And the way you do remove that is you get a pump up sprayer just filled with water. Yeah. And you wet a section and just let it kind of sit and soak on it. And that's one of the first things they do in asbestos removal is keeping it wet so the particles don't get airborne. So
gotcha.
But you would, if you have a popcorn ceiling and the house was built, prior to 82 for asbestos, then I would have it tested. And if it comes back what we term as hot, I would just have a pro do that, because you already have a health risk anyway buying a heavily smoke-filled, cigarette smoke-filled house. You already have carcinogens and odors anyway. So I would, if there's popcorn ceiling texture, I would have that tested. If it comes back that it's fine, then you just get a pump up sprayer filled with water, wet down a section, just big enough that you can work comfortably, quick, and scrape it off. And they make dustless sanders, with a vacuum. You can actually, you can remove it relatively easy as long as there's no asbestos. Then the next thing after you do that, you would have to, they make products. I do not know. I'm horrible about knowing over-the-counter products to tell you go to Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart and go buy this. I don't know those kind of things, but they do make specialized chemicals. Like one that I'm thinking of is called Tobacco Attack.
Okay.
And it's, you buy it by the gallon, and, so many ounces per gallon of water. And you again, put it in a pump up sprayer or a 5-gallon bucket and dip rags in it. And you literally have to scrub everything in that house, even the ceiling that you just scraped the popcorn texture off. You got to scrub it all down, including windows, light fixtures, detaching the light fixtures, getting underneath the rings. The light fixtures themselves are going to need it. Ceiling fans, every crevice of the ceiling fan. In fact, a lot of times you just kind of got to get rid of the ceiling fans because of all the bushings and all the mechanisms inside the ceiling fan hub. That'll retain a lot of odor, a lot of cigarette smoke. And so a lot of fixtures will get replaced, but you got to scrub down the windows, the window trim, the sashes, the stiles, every facet of the window opening itself, the door hinges, doors, door openings, all the door jambs, door stops. You got to scrub all that down with a product like Tobacco Attack, and it'll be disgusting too. It's like you'll have brown. Well, it's kind of like it kind of reminds me, if you ever saw somebody that chewing tobacco that spits that chew spit out. That's what'll be running down the walls. It's just brown and nasty and just it'll stink. It'll stink to high heaven.
Oh gosh, really?
It's disgusting. And I get these calls all the time. They're like, "Well, how much would it be to, get rid of cigarette smoke in an apartment? It's like, oh, I don't know. Another thing people don't think about is if you think back to like your kitchen, Ruo.
Yeah.
There's almost always like a half to full inch gap from the back of the cabinet to, your upper cabinets. There's always a gap back there, half inch to a full inch.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people, if you're a 2 or 3 pack a day smoker, you got an ashtray in every room. And if mom, from what I gleaned, I'm assuming this couple was older. And so if she's of a certain generation where the moms cooked all the meals and everything, there was always a tray sitting by the stove or by the sink or something that always had a cigarette burning. We've had situations in the past where we could not figure out this odor. And what we found out was all that cigarette smoke was going right up the backside of the cabinet. And there's no way to clean that with those cabinets attached to the wall. So sometimes you got to take the cabinets down and scrub the inside and the outside of the cabinets with this product like Tobacco Tack.
Wow.
And another thing, sometimes, a lot of times, it discolors between the nicotine, and by the time you get all the nicotine and tar and everything and smoke off the cabinets, a lot of times you might even end up needing to replace those cabinets, or paint them, because by the time you put this harsh chemical on it and you scrub it all down, then you might take the finish off. But if they're good enough quality and stuff, you could paint them and put them right back up. But here's a trick we found years ago. I was telling you, not only did we figure out that all this smoke was going up the backside of the cabinet, but the bottom side of the cabinets, if that cigarette has been sitting there habitually burning day in and day out, under a cabinet, then all that smoke and nicotine and tar has actually penetrated the bottom side of the cabinet itself.
Really?
Yeah. That was, we racked, we couldn't figure out why we kept smelling in this one area. And then, and if you think about it, how often do you ever lay your head on the kitchen counter and look up underneath the cabinet? No one does that. And if you do, you're going to see food splatters and, you're going to see all kinds of grody stuff that nobody ever sees except for the 3-year-old that doesn't tell you, Daddy, clean the bottom side of your cabinet. So, and depending on, a lot of times in these cigarette smoke, I'm kind of giving the worst of the worst first, and then I can kind of back it out. And there's a couple first step tries to try before you start going through the expense of cleaning everything. But then you got to look at the soft goods, carpeting and tile, vinyls, sheet goods, or linoleum, some people call it. A lot of times this tobacco tar will actually discolor, and like even though smoke rises, it still settles after it cools. And a lot of the linoleum or vinyl will be just a dingy color. And there's not much you can really do about that other than lay over it or tear it out.
Yeah.
But tearing out based on the age of the house could turn into another nightmare. If you got asbestos tile or vinyl, then that's a whole nother animal there. Then if you're really wanting to eradicate all this, then the duct work, you got to look at the duct work and the HVAC, or heating, ventilation, air conditioning system. For us blue collar guys, we call it HVAC. But anyway, you got to look at that. You even have to open up the system and clean the coil, the blower motor that forces all the air through there. You got to clean that and detach that, take it out and give it a full bath and clean and soak it and put it back in, clean the ductwork. Sometimes certain types of ductwork, you got to get to that and just cut it out and replace it and just throw it away.
Huh.
Yeah, so there's really no quick, easy answer on what's it cost or what's it take to get rid of cigarette smoke. But fortunately, most people don't sit and smoke in their bedrooms. You got to think about reality. Where are they going to smoke? In the bathrooms while they're sitting on the toilet.
Yeah.
While they're cooking, while they're eating, and sitting on the couch. Those are your main areas that you got to kind of look at. So bedrooms typically aren't that bad.
So in a situation where a home is being made ready to be put on the market and sold, a lot of the other soft goods, I guess I would imagine, like the furniture and all of the livable, the homeowners contents, yeah, all that stuff is gone. So then now you're just looking at the bare home. You're looking at cabinets, the tiling, the ceiling, material,
yeah, like the structure.
If it's popcorn or not, the cabinets, the over and the behind the cabinets. Imagine blinds. I'd imagine as well. And you mentioned the HVAC system. So
right,
it's still a lot of work. But at least you're not having to. Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's say you're inheriting mom or dad or grandparents' belongings. Let's say they both pass. Now you do have the soft goods, the soft contents. Now you got their clothing and their couches. And people of a certain generation, they tend to not have leather. Leather actually, on one hand, is better, but most of them will have a soft polyester or cotton couch is going to be your most common thing. And now you got a whole nother ball of wax. If you are inheriting somebody's, grandparents or parents, in-laws, somebody's home, now you got a whole nother nightmare. There are, and I can let listeners know that there are companies that come in and they will do all the garment cleaning, all your socks, underwear, t-shirts. They'll do all the, even dry cleaning products, garments. They can do all that, but you're talking a lot of money. It'd be better to just pitch the clothes and the couches. Even you're going to spend, something like that. You're going to spend $20 to $30 a linear foot. So let's say you got a 10-foot, couch and love seat set. I mean, you're going to possibly spend $300 to clean that, and there's no guarantee that it's not going to smell like a cigarette when you're done.
Yeah. So let's say, so assume you're not having like an allergic reaction to the tobacco film that's accumulated in all this material. And the only problem that you might have is just the fact that it smells like tobacco. Would something like Tobacco Tac, could that be used to just sort of like deodorize the items and not so much clean out the film, but just make it bearable?
Yes, but certain fabrics will bleach out with this Tobacco Tac, or it could. I've never seen it bleach out, but sometimes we can do damage in the name of cleaning. That's why it's kind of an individual basis. If it's just an odor issue and you're not worried about the chemicals left behind, the carcinogens and stuff with cigarette smoke, you can clean it good enough. But if you got an odor, then you still have carcinogens.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't personally recommend even putting the money into, if you're inheriting a parent, grandparent, in-laws, something like that. I wouldn't put any money into soft goods, period.
Yeah.
And even if you can clean it, you still got to take them out of the house. Now you got to put them in a storage locker or something like that, because there's so much going on with the structure that you can't just move the couch and everything from side to side. Next thing you know, you're going to get paint drips on it or popcorn texture falling all over it, or using plastic all you want, but it still makes a mess.
This Tobacco Tac, I Googled it. I'm looking at it on Amazon. It looks interesting. It's I'm seeing it as maybe that's a different product. Oh, I thought I was looking at the right thing. But I'm seeing something called Pro Store Thermo 55 fogging chemical.
Okay, well that's another, that would be another tool. That's not for cleaning the walls. That is and I got one of those. Actually, I don't have a gas powered one. What that is, and that was you accidentally segued into some of the lesser cost and labor intensive ways to combat this problem. That's a thermofog. That's actually an oil petroleum based product that particular one. Well, you got electric and gas. The gas ones are like really cool. It's like a flamethrower. I mean, it's gas powered but that's more like in a commercial warehouse type setting or big open area. You can't run a combustible gasoline engine in a 1,200, 1,500 square foot home, or somebody's going to die of carbon monoxide poisoning. So they do have an electric version. Yeah, the guy holding the flamethrower is what it is. And he'll just go to sleep and not even know he's dying while he's holding this open flame. So I use an electric one. Same concept, but essentially, now if you want me to get a little geeky with you?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So the human hair, if you just rip out one of your hairs, on average, it's 75 microns thick. So picture, pulling out a strand of your daughter's hair. You've seen it. She brushes her hair. You see the hair somewhere. If you were to pick that up, put it under a microscope and measure it, it's 75 microns, right?
Okay.
The smoke particles in a residential fire, they tell us, is between 7. It's been a while since I've done fire restoration, so I'm not 100% on this, but I remember it being between like 7 and 12 microns. Is that smoke particle that's getting embedded and blasted into your drywall is 7 to 12 microns wide. So we're talking microscopic like that. So that's how smoke gets behind the drywall in a house fire. Then they say with cigarette smoke, it's that smoke is between 3 and 5 microns. So we're talking really tiny. You can't even see it. Yeah, you see the puff of smoke coming out when you exhale or whatever, or the little stream of smoke coming off the cigarette. But you can't see it like the microns and stuff. Now, to tie this into my world that I live in now, I deal with mold remediation. When we run a HEPA filter, it gets everything down to 0.03 microns. That 99.97% effectiveness of a HEPA, that's what that means. It's like it gets it down to 0.03 microns. You're talking itty bitty.
Wow.
So this thermo, what was it? What do you call it? Thermo 55? I can look on my shelf.
Yeah, Thermo 55.
All right. So the theory, here's one of the ways to combat this. And this is not something you can do over the, on your own. You're going to have to hire a pro or buy a lot of expensive equipment. But so what we do is we heat this solution up, and they come scented and unscented, cherry and mint and cinnamon and all these flavors, right? Yeah. It smells really good. It heats up. They tell us to 0.4 microns. So when we go through with either gas powered or electric powered thermofog, we got to go like kind of inch by inch, not right on it, but close enough that this hot molecule is actually penetrating the drywall and getting into the crevices to neutralize the soot and the tar and stuff.
Ooh.
It's not good, it's not 100% fail safe. And that scent that you smell, cherry or mint or cinnamon or whatever, that's actually a professional grade masking agent. So by the time that's, in theory, what they say is that it's small enough that it's going to get into the tight unreachable crevices. And then it's going to leave that masking agent behind that will, by the time that dissipates, then the soot should be neutralized.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It reminds me of taking a steam to some garment to get rid of the wrinkles, but you're using basically the steam to penetrate the surface at a super duper tiny level to neutralize the funk that's there, and at the same time at providing a deodorizer, I guess.
Right. Yeah, essentially. Yep. That is one method, and in my neck of the woods, something like that runs 5 cents a cubic foot.
But it's I imagine. I mean, you'd have to wear a mask or something because you can't breathe that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's full PPE. Okay. My office attire is PPE, Tyvek suits and respirators, and face masks and respirators and gloves and boots and goggles and all that. So So definitely, yeah, you're not going to you're not going to walk in and do this without some either, one of the PAR system, that's a personal air respiratory, where you're pumping oxygen. In certain situations, we have to wear oxygen tanks. If we're up in an attic or, in a confined space, we have to wear basically like scuba gear to breathe. So that is one method that you, like I said, accidentally segued into a cheaper alternative than so time consuming and labor intensive as to detach every ceiling fan and light fixture and switch plate cover and all that might still need to be done as well. The other thing that if you Google odor removal, you'll run across ozone, and ozone is great for organic matter. So like if you had a protein fire in your house, and a protein fire is essentially like you use a smoke alarm as a timer instead of the kitchen timer when you're baking a turkey. That's a protein fire. That is the nastiest fire ever. It's nastier than dead body cleanup as far as odor goes and cleanup goes. But anyway, ozone is, if it's a light odor, like it's just not, I wouldn't even, as a professional, I wouldn't even recommend an ozone generator being used on a 2 or 3 pack a day smoker for decades. And two people that are 2 or 3 pack a day smokers, I mean, that's essentially 4 to 6 packs a day. And if company's over, it can easily hit 10 packs, you know what I'm saying, on a Friday night or something. So ozone wouldn't be good, but if it's, that's the cheapest option too. You just run a machine for 48 hours. You get rid of fish tanks, dogs, plants, people, stay out of there for 48 hours. Run it near a cold air return. Turn the fan system on your HVAC system. Turn it to on, and come back in 48 hours. Let it air out, and see what that does.
Huh. I wonder what hotels use to deodorize the smoke that's, in hotels.
Well, they're going to use, first of all, it's hard to find a hotel that allows smoking anywhere, which is great. But they utilize ozone because it's not, excuse me. It's not as repetitive. I mean, I guess the smoker room back in the day, from what I remember, they used to be on the top floor. They didn't ozone very often in those areas because if you're a smoker and you request a smoking room, you just know. But have you ever been in a hotel room that a smoker had been in?
Oh yeah.
And it's nasty. But they utilize ozone machines in the non-smoking room where someone does smoke. That's what they're using because it's not habitual and repetitive. They might have had a small party in their hotel room and some people were smoking and stuff, but it wasn't by and large a multi-pack a day, every day, all day, every day. And even in the smokers' rooms, if you think about it, what do most people do when they travel? They're on vacation and they're out at the beach, or they're on business and they're at the conference, or they're sightseeing during the day if it's not a beach. And you know what I mean? So they're not in the room all day, every day. It's just in the evening, after dinner, that sort of thing. So it's not that big a deal. But they utilize ozone, perfect for that. Ozone works great in hotel rooms and those one-off kind of odd odors. But it's only going to work on organic odors.
Gotcha. Sorry to cut you off when I asked the question about. Wonder what hotels use when their rooms are stunk.
Oh, you're fine. Smoke. This is called a conversation, Will. Have you ever had one before?
I try not to.
You're one of those IT guys. You just sit in a cube and leave me alone. You blast heavy metal music and while you're cranking out all your IT crap, right?
And Twitch.
Drinking Mountain Dew and Red Bull. And
you talked about what do you call it? Protein fire? Protein smoke? Protein odor.
Protein fire. Protein fire is what we call it.
You mentioned protein fire, and early at the top of the episode, you talked about popcorn ceilings, and it it reminded me of a story a friend told me about. And this hasn't. I imagine there could be a smoke component to this story, but I'm not going to talk about it. But it had to do with in high school, a friend of a friend came home late, kind of drunk, and wanted to eat some canned corned beef. And for some reason, their method of heating up the can of corned beef is to take the can, remove maybe the paper label that's around the can, and then puncture a hole on top of the can, and then have the can sit in a pot of water, like a shallow pot of water, and then heat up the water to sort of, I guess, steam heat
that is one way to do it.
And because the guys were drunk, they left the thing unattended, and the result was the can of corned beef exploded, and on the ceiling was where the corned beef went. And my friend described
it's like a pipe. It's like a pipe bomb of corned beef.
Yeah, exactly. And then they were using a spatula to scrape the stuff off of the ceiling, and I was thinking, that's just so wrong all around. But yeah, just those two little bits of information.
Did they have a microwave?
If they had a microwave at the time, it probably been worse damage. But yeah, that's just a stupid story that I wanted to share.
Oh, well. So there's one other that is funny, but yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say, well, let's get back on track.
Yeah, where do you go from explosive corned beef? Ugh. Yeah, so there is one other that I know. There might be a few others, and you can Google search, odor removal, cigarette odor removal. I'm sure a lot of it's going to be good. A lot of it's going to be baking soda, peroxide, and vinegar based, but it's all going to take elbow grease. There is one other way. Well, there's two other ways. The newest, latest, greatest. I'm looking at a packet of it right now.
And by the way, real quick, is baking soda and peroxide safe combined? Because I know that there was supposed to be some sort of combination of something in peroxide that wouldn't be safe.
Well, no, you can mix baking soda. I mean, it's going to bubble and foam. That's how you make your it's how do you make your volcanoes in high school? Wasn't it baking soda? Was it vinegar or peroxide? I can't remember if you dump it in.
Vinegar, I think, but okay.
I think so. No, you can mix it. I mean, they're household. I mean, yeah, you can mix it. You don't want to mix bleach with anything.
Okay, bleach and anything. Okay, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, bleach, and maybe baking soda would be all right. But anyway, so there's before I get to this little packet that I was talking about, another way if you inherit or buy a property like this, if you just want to just get by on a relatively quick, easy, and cheap, you can just take down all the cabinets, uppers and lowers, lay a layer of 1/4-inch drywall over everything, mud and tape, and texture it, put a fresh coat of, paint over everything, and sell the house. Like I would do that if you're just literally just trying to flip it or turn into maybe a rental. But if you sell it, it's as is. If the odor comes back in a month or two, that's on the new owner to figure that out. That's expensive, but yet kind of quick. I mean, you can put new drywall over everything in 5 days and paint it and everything, be done. Maybe 7 days.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recommend that one. That's something you're going to find a cheap landlord that just wants to unload their property and kick the can down the road and, sayonara, see ya. That's not something I would do to somebody that's buying a property that I own. But there is one other product that is called chlorine dioxide. It's a gas and a liquid. And that is the most spectacular odor removal system for odors like cigarette and even mold odors, sewage backups in the basements, like, what Mark Thompson and what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. It's a great deodorizer. However, it's very, very deadly. Like everything living, plants included, have to be removed out of the house for a minimum of 6 hours. And it's relatively cheap. Like one of these packets, I would come and set it off in your room. It's designed for a room that's roughly, 10 by 10 by 8. Like I've been showing you pictures of my mold experiment that I have going on. I built a room out of plastic, PVC, and I'm going to do some testing with this product here. But chlorine dioxide is the newest thing that's hit the market in the last 5 years, and it will get rid of the odor, no doubt. 100%, it will get rid of all the odors in that house. However, you still have all that gummy tar, dingy brown residue on everything, and you still got to clean it because you can't. I mean, you can paint over it, but it's gonna like flake off in no time. Even Kills is not gonna penetrate that tar if it's a repetitive long-term smoker situation. Wow. So yeah. If you want to knock down the odor, though, chlorine dioxide will hands down get rid of that smell.
All right.
No doubt. So
it's spectacular because you got to clear the vicinity for at least 6 hours, otherwise you die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, you will die. You will die.
You die. Don't do this, guys. So we're looking at. You're not going to be able to get. Well, you might be able to get some chlorine dioxide gas over. Somebody will sell it to you, but that's usually something you need to know a little bit about. So we've identified two interesting ways to die. One using a thermal fog sort of device that uses some sort of fueling system, and then chlorine dioxide.
Right. Well, and ozone. Ozone is deadly too.
And ozone.
Yeah, you want to hear a little pet peeve of mine? Oh, this one just drives me insane.
What is
ozone?
It?
Ozone is it's a tool. I mean, it's a very good tool in the right environment. But owning an ozone generator is like only owning a hammer. It just there's a time and there's a place for it. A lot of people. I've even had I had to tell a customer that I'm not interested. Her doctor kept telling her, well, you can run ozone to kill mold. And I'm like, no, you can't. And they're like, well, my doctor says. I'm like, well, no. What your doctor don't know. Here's my pet peeve. Here's my little rant. Ozone has been shown to kill mold one time, many years ago, in an industrially sized ozone generator in a very extremely tightly controlled room that you can't reproduce in the field at all. It was just, it was an experiment. In a clean room environment, it was a very tightly controlled room that you cannot reproduce in the real world, nowhere ever. And they're only shown at one time, and it was a slight reduction in the mold count. And to top it all off, dead mold is just as toxic and just as allergenic as living mold. In fact, most of the mold spores that we see on our air samples, or most of the mold that I'm removing out of the home or the RV that was in my shop or whatever, it's already dead. 75% of it's dead from the moment it's sporulated out of the mold plant. A sporulation is the same as the mammal's ejaculation. Wow. So there's just some science geeky stuff. But so when you think about this little plant that gives off its mold spores, 75% of it's non-viable, will never grow mold at any time, no matter what. The perfect conditions, it will never grow mold ever. But it's just as toxic, just as allergenic. So when this doctor said it kills mold, I can't compete with a doctor as far as knowledge and credentials and believability and credibility and all that. But he doesn't know that, if let's say ozone did kill mold, you still got dead mold spores laying everywhere. Where are you going to put them besides your respiratory system? So ozone is a very good tool, but it's not the perfect tool, be all catch all.
I doubt the doctor could say that mold is also mold ejaculation.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's probably never heard the term sporulation. So there's a little small rant on ozone.
I like that.
Now,
I like that rant.
As far as ozone, now if you got a car that has, a smoker's car, and you want to get rid of it, you crank up ozone in a car. You let it sit for like 24 to 48 hours. The last 20, 30 minutes, you crank the AC and just run it for 20 or 30 minutes with the ozone in it. And then you open up the windows and the doors and let it air out for a while, and you're good to go. I mean, at least good enough to sell the car. I mean, the odors will probably still come back, but ozone's great. It's great for the right thing, like cars. Not good for a house. Not good for a repetitive, hardcore, heavy pack smoker. Repetitive every day for decades. It's not gonna phase it.
How does ozone work? Because I'm looking at a machine. I'm looking at a machine, and then there's like some filter sort of film on one end, and then the other end it looks like they're just like electrical stuff. What?
Yeah, it's essentially lightning in a box is what it is. Because the ozone, for people that don't know what that is, after a heavy rain, heavy lightning storm, when you go outside in that spring day and you smell that, well, I know what the smell is, but it's that it's basically lightning in a box. So that after a lightning storm, that smell that you smell when you go outside after the rain stops, that's ozone. Yeah. So that's what it kind of smells like. And ozone is actually oxygen with a third radical, or a third atom that's radical. So the oxygen you and I are breathing while we're recording this podcast, what is it, like 20% of the air is oxygen. That's O2. So like your water is H2O. That's 2 oxygen atoms with 1 hydrogen atom, right? Your hydrogen peroxide is 2 hydrogen atoms and 2 oxygen atoms. Your ozone is 3 oxygen atoms. So what they say on an organic odor situation, that third oxygen molecule is radical, and it wants to, I forget my chemistry terminology, but it essentially like breaks off from the other 2 atoms, and essentially it just grabs the organic matter in the air or on the surface, like, and ozone's heavy too. So like if we were going to run an ozone machine in your house, there are certain situations, we run it and we stick it up as high as we can so it fills up more of because it falls down heavy. So essentially that third oxygen atom gathers like Pac-Man the organic matter that's causing the odors, and it will render the odors neutralized.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, who would have thought a water damaged guy has to deal with chemistry and pH and that sort of thing. I wish so bad, looking back in my college and high school days, I wish I would have paid a little better attention to chemistry, because everything I do is chemistry now.
Well, it makes me, well, there's a couple of things. It makes me wonder, is the ozone sort of technology what most sort of air purifiers operate off of, or some of them do? And then the other
Most of them, yes.
Okay. And then the other one was, as I looked through some of this equipment online, they've got like ceramic plates and
oh yeah.
I mean, what's that all about? How does the ceramic plate play into it all?
From my understanding, like if you look at those ceramic plates, if there's a close up, there's like electrical wire things embedded in it.
Yeah.
And when they put electric current to it, then there's I forget my electrical terminology, but there's something that'll that's what creates the lightning, essentially. That's where ozone also is coming from your copy machines. A lot of copier machines will put out ozone. That's a smell that people might recognize. But yes, mostly your air purifiers are going to be ozone based. And ozone is actually, back to my little rant earlier, it's actually extremely dangerous, extremely poisonous. You can't have but how many parts per million, not even billion. My air filters and filtration devices, they don't even filter out ozone, period. We have an ozone meter that will tell us when it's safe to go in. So we literally, when we're dealing with ozone, we will put the mask on because it will filter some out, but we'll put a mask on, run in, turn the machine off, all while we're trying to hold our breath, and then open any doors and windows that we can, and then give it 20, 30 minutes to air out. And it's extremely dangerous. Ozone actually has an MSDS sheet. Well, they don't call it MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheets. I forgot what they call it now. But it has a MSDS sheet. And if you read it, it'll cause massive respiratory ailments. It will actually cause chromosomal damage to your unborn kids. Like it messes with your gonads. So if you're a male, it's going to mess with your testes. If you're a female, it's going to mess with your ovaries. It'll cause nosebleeds, headaches, like the slightest. And that is one thing I am chemically sensitive to, is ozone. If I go into certain offices and I run it or smell that, I will have a headache for like 4 hours that I can't get rid of. No amount of sleep, no amount of ibuprofen, no amount of nothing will get rid of that headache from ozone. It's very dangerous. But it's sold. I mean, you go to Amazon, you can,
like here, like
air purifier.
Yeah.
And a lot of beauty shops will run it. Like my mom, won't listen to me. She runs it from time to time. She owns a hair salon, and whenever 2 or 3 of them are in there cranking out perms and stuff, if you've ever been in a hair salon and they're running a perm, it. Well, they don't like that smell, so they get rid of it with ozone. Ozone is a great odor killer. It's just way too dangerous.
Good to know, because I was imagining, just go to your garage sales and pick up every old copier you can, put it all in a room and run it so you can get some ozone. But that's not safe to do.
No.
Can you imagine?
But it is a tool. Don't get me wrong. I'm down on it for the consumer use, but it has its place. It's a tool like anything else. Like I have several. I got a lot of tools. One of which is an ozone machine. But it's like I also have a battery powered nail gun. If that was my only tool, guess what? I'd be nailing everything. Oh, you got a baseboard loose? Pop. There you go. Well, it's just a tool. That's all it is. But you got to know how to utilize your tools and how to use it.
Wow. So we're looking at. Okay. Was there anything else?
I can't think of any other way to get rid of cigarette smoke.
So we started talking about the ceiling, and right away, if you see popcorn ceilings, how not only is there asbestos, depending on the age of when that was applied, but that's one of the first places you'd attack as far as removing smoke odor in a property. And you talked about tobacco attack. I had to look that one up.
Made by
Unsmoke. You talked about the areas that you would attack. You're talking about the ceiling, the cabinets, the linoleum, the ductwork, the blower motors, just to name some of the things that you'd work on. You also talked about the thermal fog sort of technology or approach, the ozone generators, some baking soda and peroxide, and then the very spectacular chlorine dioxide.
Yes.
Yeah.
And or just a total cover up with drywall and fresh coat of paint and new light fixtures.
So and you did go into another pet peeve. I remember your first pet peeve had to do, and I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but it had to do with those Lysol wipes.
Yeah.
So when you went into
that
this,
might have been on your podcast.
It might have been. Yeah. That's right. But today you covered the pet peeve in ozone, how it's effective. It's at its time and place. It's a tool, but people can get caught up in thinking that it's sort of like something that they can use at any old time and hope to get certain results off of it. If there was anything,
did you ever verify what I told you about the Lysol wipes? Did you ever see if I was lying to you?
No, I looked at the label. You're right that that you need to apply the product and keep it wet for a certain amount of time in order for it to do what it's supposed to do. But most people just
it's like 5 to 10 minutes too, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, and most people just wipe it on and then dry it off and thinking, okay, it smells all chemically, it must be clean, but no. And I share that information too with folks who get caught up in it.
Good, but they don't listen to you, do they?
I wonder if this constitutes a episode sort of maintenance or service guy tip, or from all of this, is there something that you want that we can come up with as far as
well, there's a few tips. First off, if you're looking at popcorn ceiling removal, have it tested. Spend the money, have it tested. See if it's asbestos. If it is what it is. You can cover over it. You could lay some sheetrock right over it. That is one form of any time you're dealing with lead and asbestos, you can encapsulate, and that is a way to encapsulate it. So don't just go scraping your popcorn ceiling texture off without knowing what you're dealing with. The other tip is don't get caught up in the marketing, and like we all know, 99% of marketing is just junk. So don't get caught up in the marketing of ozone as a cure-all, perfect panacea of everything that ails you. Actually, you want to know something that's crazy, Ruel, talking about ozone?
Yeah, what?
So I was part of a ozone, or a part of a mold group on Facebook, and it was like I was brought in as an expert, and it's 99.9% just lay people. And so they actually, for like $800, if you have a mold sickness and you happen to be female, they make an ozone generator that's vaginally induced to cure your mold sickness. And I was, railing on that, and they said, what do you know? And I said, well, what's the poor guy got to do? I mean, if you're got a mold sickness and you're a guy, I mean, do you anally take this? I don't even know what. I mean, I looked it up. You just do your own Google search. It's a vibrator basically with an ozone machine attached to it. But so if a poor guy has a mold sickness, how does he fix it? The girls are, at least they got an orifice that's designed for something like this. But so anyway, sorry, a little sidebar there. But and then the other.
You can't just say orifice and anally and then expect my mind to clear out of all of that imagery. I'll try.
Like I said, I'll let you do your own Google search.
Because I'm thinking. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the tips are, don't do your own asbestos removal, or at least know what you got. Don't utilize ozone machines for everything. And then you brought up an old rant of mine that I've railed on forever, and that's just Lysol wipes. And we can talk about that in great depth one day if you really ever want to talk about it. But that is one of the worst products I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe even Lysol spray. At least you can get 10 minutes of that, but you got to have 12 cans. So anyway, sorry, that's for a topic for a different day.
Yeah, we'll definitely cover that on another day.
So yeah, I think we've done this.
All right, sounds good.
It's almost time to go get my girlies.
Nicely done. Okay. And
so with that, Ruel, I'd like to thank you for carving some time out of your day to record this for us.
I want to thank you too for, sharing your knowledge with the listeners here on the podcast. We love it. The show is getting some really good reviews. If anybody hasn't noticed, we've gotten some additional reviews and additional ratings on Apple Podcasts. And before you or I sign out, just wanted to remind folks, the Service Guys podcast is online on social. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Service Guys Pod. Follow us, like us, share us with your friends, and
most importantly, though, give us a 5-star review. I don't care if you just say that Ruel doesn't talk enough. Just throw something out there with 5 stars, or just say that Lonnie just talks too much. That works too. Just throw out 5 stars, and that helps. The algorithms find us and more people find this podcast if you find any value in what we're saying here today. So with that, we need to sign out.
All right.
Did we ever decide on a full, official sign out, or do we just say this is Lonnie Beecham with Restoration in Jeff City, Missouri, and Ruel with the Abadam Studios? Abadam Studios. Signing off, saying get your life back to normal.
They'll get your life back to normal. Lonnie with Restore It, Restoration.
This is another Coffee with Heavy Cream production.